this is Cassie Brighter, and we're having the sex talk. I'm sitting here with Reba Sparrow.
Hi.
And Eric Scheur.
Hello.
And these are the producers of the Mystery Box show here in Portland, Oregon. Reba is the executive producer. One of the things I noticed as I was looking into the many different videos that are online, that are on YouTube, is I found what must have been a really early video where you were actually sharing. It wasn't the performer telling the story, but you had the performer in a box strapped to your waist.
Interesting way to put it.
Because you had recorded a sex worker in the Bunny Ranch, and you were narrating her story. What prompted you to capture that story? What made you think of capturing that story?
No, it's true. Yeah, that was super early on. That was our very first show. Very first show, yeah. As a matter of fact, I don't even think we would allow that kind of format now with what the show is, having a recorded voice. But what prompted me is that for a while I was inspired by radio journalists, especially This American Life and Radio Lab, people like that. And so during a road trip one year, I just took along a microphone and interviewed and collected stories from anyone I could. And one of my stops was at the Bunny Ranch. And as I say in the story, I think I was interested in purchasing the comforts of the Bunny Ranch as I approached it, but then I got too nervous. So I decided, while I'm here, I might as well see if there's any stories anybody else wants to share. And that's what made it to the very first show.
And it's a brilliant thought because, oh my God, the sex workers have stories.
They do. But I was so surprised by what I found there. And I think a lot of people that have heard the story on YouTube are surprised that, yeah, sex workers have stories, and you might expect that it would be like, oh, here's a crazy thing that I did, or, you know, like just a wild adventure. But this woman shared with me such a heartfelt experience of the clients that she's worked with. It was really a wonderful surprise.
It was really moving. I was half listening to this segment, and I got pulled more and more into it, and then it ended opening up into such a heartfelt human experience. I think this is at the core of what attracted me to have the sex talk with the two of you, in the fact that what you're doing is pretty special. Reba, what drew you to be on stage yourself and also to produce the show?
Well, I had met Eric, and he told me that he had done this show, but you had only done 5 of them at the time?
Something like that.
I think 5 shows, so it was really early on.
Mm-hmm.
And my background is in theater and directing and also psychology and all those things. So I went and saw the show, and I said, "That's okay, but I can make it better." And he was like, "No thanks, that's cool, I got it." And I can't remember, how did I wiggle my way in there?
I think what had happened was that some people had dropped out.
Right, so early on, this, I think you were going to ask maybe later, why do people want to share their stories? Well, until we got sort of a name for ourselves, people didn't want to share stories. They wanted to hear the stories, but they didn't quite feel comfortable sharing stories, so it was hard to get storytellers.
Everybody wants to eat the pie, nobody wants to bake the pie.
Right. And so Eric was in a tizzy because some people had dropped out. Like, we just got cold feet. And so I was like, that's fine, I got people. And so I got 2 storytellers a couple days before the show.
Yeah, it was miraculous.
It earned me some cred.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah.
And then I was like, see, I'm reliable. Now watch what I can do in a coaching session. That's kind of what happened, I think.
It's true, yeah. And the story I tend to tell people when they ask how the show came about was that I started the show by myself, but a year later, Reba came along and made it a good show. Which is literally what happened.
I mean, I think it's because it touches on what you just said, is that when you were watching Eric's story, that it was actually a more human experience, or I forget what words you just said, but that it's not just about the sex, it's deeper than that. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the core of what we do, is that we make sure that we bring up the deeper than that part of it.
Absolutely. And I know that I'm kind of catching you without a lot of background, so if you want to go and listen to all of the Mystery Box show tapings and then come back and listen to the rest of this for context, there's a lot of... How many do you think you have by now?
Close to 200.
Holy... 200, yeah. So let me tell you the way I found out about this, which is I do web work, and they do video and stuff like that. And often while I'm working on the laptop, I have stand-up comedy playing in the background. I have a YouTube video playing in the background, which keeps me amused while I'm doing technical stuff. YouTube has gotten to know me. So YouTube said, you'll probably like this. And so I'm suddenly I went from listening to comedy without any active action from my part. I'm now listening to spoken, and I also listen to spoken word a lot. I listen to The Moth and other things. And so now I'm listening to something which sounds a lot like the sex positive communities that I belong to, and it sounds a lot like Portland. And it's very frankly sexual in a really matter-of-fact way, which is something that I really like, but it's kind of infrequent. It's not that common for people to open up and tell so vulnerably their sex stories. Mm-hmm. So at some point I was like, hang on, what is this? And that's when I looked up the playlist, and I'm like, I'm listening to the Mystery Box Show, and it's in Portland, which is where I am right now, so that was really fortuitous. And then I saw Stella Harris. Mm-hmm. I sent a message to Stella going, girl, why didn't you tell me about this? Yeah. And she said, they're doing one in December, you should apply.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Stella's been around from the beginning.
Yeah.
I think, right?
Yeah.
Are you and I both dying to know, who did you listen to? What was the story? Do you even remember?
Oh gosh. I listened to the gal who was sending her pee, I think.
No, Sierra.
Yes. I think it was the first one that I listened to. This very, very young woman. One of the things that happened to me is that I came into empowerment of my sexuality very late in my life. And I have a grief over that. In the fact that if I had been as assured, if I had been as comfortable with myself much earlier in my life, I would have had a richer life, I would have had happier experiences. So it always entrances me when you find somebody in their young 20s who just owns their sexuality, you know? And this was the vibe that I got from this gal. Mm-hmm. Then I listened to Stella. I listened to, I think the thumbnail says I had never been fingered like this before.
Jennifer Lynn.
Yeah. That was pretty intense too.
We know all 200 of them.
It's really funny how it's kind of like name that tune.
Yeah.
So one of the things that draws me to these things is that you would think that the reason why you would listen to this is the fact that this is salacious, the fact that this is lusty, the fact that it would get you off. But instead, I think that the key draw to listening to this is you feel less ashamed of whatever your vibe, your kink, your fantasy is, because you see regular people, mm-hmm. Somebody that you might meet at Trader Joe's, and you're like, oh, you do that? You send pee to strangers in the mail?
Yes. Yeah, and I think on the other, spectrum, I guess I'll call it, to that, we also, it's hard to find, but we've also featured folks who are asexual. Mm-hmm. And, they don't have any kinks or fantasies, and letting people know, that's normal too.
Something else I really liked is the fact that you have a broad spectrum of people presenting. I listened to a gay man talking. I listened to different kinds of human experience, and I love the fact that you get a sense of a rich tapestry of human experience.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is really Reba's doing with the stories that we curate. Like you said, the expectation might be that sex stories are going to be salacious, but Reba's able to dig down beneath that and find the emotions that connect everybody. That no matter what your experience is, no matter who you are, no matter what spectrum you align yourself along, you'll relate to the emotions, even if you don't relate to the specific experiences or even body parts.
Absolutely. It's the epiphanies, it's the breakthroughs that feel really real, that kind of, I guess, we all aspire. Okay, but so here's a question that really, which is kind of a funny question because I've been in the Mystery Box Show myself. But I can see why people might want to listen to these things, but why on earth would anybody in their right mind get up on stage and be recorded for YouTube telling these really frank, really, really very kinky sometimes sex stories?
I don't think we can speak on behalf of every single person, but some things that I've observed and things that people have said, often people tell us during the coaching process it's very cathartic for them and it's just healing. Not that we want them to heal on stage in front of people. We can try to not do that. But I think that it's just an opportunity to sort of get perspective from other people and to work things out themselves. And I also think that oftentimes before a person has pitched a story to us, they've seen the stories on YouTube or they've been to a live show and they had an experience or a connection with a storyteller. So they know that if they're going to tell a story, or they hope, you know, the intention is if they're going to tell a story that someone else is going to relate to them and not going to throw tomatoes at them, not because they had such a good experience as a listener or an audience person. That's my observation.
Yeah, it's a very supportive audience for sure.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah, it was wonderful to be so well received. In your conversations, and you do an amazing job at coaching, both of you. But Eric, in your experiences in coaching people, what is it that you find? Do they share with you what made them send in a submission, etc.?
We usually make that one of the questions we ask people right off the bat. Is like, what made you want to get in touch with us? But honestly, I don't think that plays as much into the coaching. People's answers is usually just like Reba said, oh, I've been to the show, or I've seen it, or somebody told me I should get on stage. Yeah, I can't speak to why somebody would want to. There's clearly a lot of people who would find it intimidating, and there's other people who find it exhilarating or pushing a boundary that they want to try to push.
And I think because just as a general society, we don't talk that frankly about sex. And so here is a platform where you can talk frankly about sex and it's received really well. Actually, we sometimes come across this in the coaching process. People will skip over all the details and they'll say things like, and then, you know, and we're like, no, we don't know. But they're so used to not talking about it that we sort of hold their hand. And we never encourage anyone to say something they're not comfortable with, but you know, they want to talk about it, but they're like, I only say this to my best friend, or I only say it to my cat, or whatever. So I think it's an opportunity. It's refreshing to be able to talk about these things.
It really is. One of the things that I remember from the coaching sessions is the fact that, yeah, it's kind of like certain things that are close to your experience you take for granted, and my point of view I take for granted, and I kind of figure, well, this is unimportant, this is not really that interesting or whatever, and both of you would sometimes encourage me to surface this, saying, no, hold on, this is relevant and this is an important component of the story. And it was cathartic for me, because it kind of, one thing I really, really liked, and I get the sense that, I've gotten the sense that you're both this way with all performers, is you really respect the core and the message and the spirit of their story. You just find ways for us to give it more color and give it more strength.
I think that's accurate.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing Eric always says to people. If any of this doesn't resonate, if we're giving feedback and it doesn't resonate with you, please say, no, that's not how it happened. Because that can be tricky for us. Like sometimes we want to say, well, I wish that your story went this way, because that would make a great story. And that if that's not true, audience is smart. And storytellers are smart. I mean, everybody we're working with is smart intellectually and emotionally. And if you start fabricating something just for a punchline, or just, because you think that's what an audience wants to hear, they're going to know and they're not going to like it as much.
Yeah, and it's clear that we're not doing this for a punchline and that's not your mission. Something that was really important to me, as I've captured these little moments in my life, but I had roommates in LA. One roommate was a young gal who had a 5-year-old kid. She had this kid when she was 17. And in speaking to her, I found out that the reason why she got pregnant at 17 is because she was very kinky. She was very submissive and very kinky. And this is not something she had foreseen. And this is something that hit her very hard, hit her at a very young age. And there was only one guy who would identify that. And that's the guy that took advantage of her and left her pregnant. It's good when you tell these stories and you give people points of reference and points of understanding about their sexuality, so they can go, oh, so it doesn't catch them by shock and surprised, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I wish I could speak to you both for hours, but what would you like to say to people who are thinking about expressing their sexuality more openly and speaking more openly about their sexuality? How do you go about doing this?
You mean generally in life?
I actually do mean generally in life, because chances are not everyone who's watching this YouTube video is going to contact you or want to be on your show. But what they might want is to capture the general vibe of being this open with their sexuality.
I think for me it's important just to ask. I don't think we ask people enough questions, and we make assumptions all the time. So if you're in a room, if you're having coffee with someone or you're at a party, ask, is it okay if I share this with you?
That's true. I mean, at a broad level, you're talking about consent, and there are times when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate, for sure. We're not in favor of people just going out and saying whatever they want to whomever they want. There's places where it's inappropriate. There's places where it's dangerous. But yeah, if you ask, is everybody comfortable hearing this? You might be surprised by the answers you get. I think at our show, people purchasing tickets and entering the theater, that is giving consent to hear whatever they're going to hear. But if you're in public, if you're around family or friends, yeah, like you said, ask. That's a great...
Among friends, for sure. And modeling the behavior, right? Because if somebody says, well, I recently had an experience with rope, I was tied up, would you like to hear it or something like that? It might encourage other people to be like, well, actually, I had something unusual or new, some experience.
And I think to piggyback on that, I think the more confidently a person talks about it, more confidently you ask, or casually even, I think that helps normalize as well, makes other people feel comfortable. For instance, Stella and I have talked about this before. If people ask oh, what do you do? And Stella might say, oh, I'm a sex educator. She just says it very casually, this is matter-of-factly, this is my job and it's not a big deal. Or I might say, yeah, I work, sort of adjacent to the sex industry or in it, depending on what, depending on how you view that. And just say it matter-of-factly and casually and not be ashamed or embarrassed because you're afraid of what the response will be. Then other people will hop on board with that and be like, oh, that's normal.
Exactly.
The way you present it.
One thing that I would like to impart in you is that at the heart of enjoying sex, and honestly at the heart of enjoying life, is vulnerability and sharing and connection. And so things like this, and I strongly encourage you to watch all the sessions of the Mystery Box Show, things such as the things that Reba and Eric have brought to the world, and your stories as you share them with your friends, are the kind of things that encourage that vulnerability and the connection, which is so important to us. And this has been the Sex Talk with Eric and Reba. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cassie.
Thank you, Cassie. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.